Hey everyone, thanks for coming to the session today, and sorry about the screen sharing thing. Hopefully to cover all bases, so we've got all the methods on here. We're aiming to get a border onto our image, so we want to end up with something like this. And you may find that your images from Canons and Nikons and so on, they may look a little bit sort of more satisfying on an A4 because the relationship of the image to that size is going to give you borders that look almost equal. So that's something to think about. But I'll show you both sizes, 10 by 8 and A4. And to be honest, there's so many different ways you can get here, so I've tried to simplify it. Let's take a look. So we could have an image open in Photoshop. This is one way, literally any image that you've just opened in. So this is currently, if I look at image and image size, this is currently straight out of the camera, and you can see it's still 19 inches wide, so clearly too big at the moment. So I'm going to just resize it. I'm going to use image size. Okay, and I'm literally going to change that long edge to something slightly smaller than the print that I want, or the end image that I want. So if I want, I don't know, a 10-inch wide image, maybe I'll make this 9.5 inches. Okay, so I can't alter the height in relation to the width. Obviously that's going to be dictated by the image itself. All right, so but at this stage we can check the resolution. We've got 300 pixels per inch, which is what we want. So I'm just going to say OK, and now I've got my 9.5-inch wide image. I can now add a border. So if I go image and then canvas size this time, and I can literally just, if you make sure this is unticked, I'm literally just going to make the total width 10 and the total height 8. So we're making a new document now, so we can choose what we want. And you can see the current size is there, or so we can see what we're changing it to. And we want the canvas extension color to be white, or whatever you want really. So bear in mind that canvas extension color just means we're extending the canvas. In other words, we're creating a border. All right, so I just click OK, and there we go. So this is a 10 by 8 with a Canon image on it. And the thing is, with this method, there's not really much, versatility. I'm kind of stuck with what I've got, what I've made. There's no layers to mess around with. We're done. And now I would export. Okay, so I would choose File and then Save As. That's one way I could send it out, and at that stage I could name it and choose, if I didn't have JPEG there already, I could choose JPEG if that's what I want. Okay, so that's one way. And you want to be careful of things like file size. You guys are sending zip files, so I think you can send fairly large files. But if you need to reduce it a tiny bit to reduce in file size, you'll see it will go down quite quickly to something quite a lot less. All right. So if I click OK there. The other method, making an A4, let's have a look at dragging an image in onto a template. And just while I'm here, I've just noticed, you see the first image was 8-bit. You can see here it says 8. If you do have an image that is still 16-bit, that's double the file size, so be careful of that. To change that to 8-bit before you export, which you'll need to do, just go Image, Mode, and then 8-bit. Okay, so if you spot you've got a 16-bit image, make sure you change it to 8-bit. And you can see now it says 8 there. All right. Okay, so I am going to make a new document. So File, New, File, New, and I'm going to choose what I want to call it. I mean, usually if I'm doing this, I would actually call it the size that it is, and just make sure that I can find it. So I don't know, some indication of what it is perhaps. And you'll find that there are presets here. So if you click in document type, you'll find you can choose international paper, and that will give you an A4 version, or photo 10:8 landscape. That's what I'm going to choose. Okay, so at this stage also you can check, we've got RGB color. I'm going to change that to 8-bit, and background is going to be white. And here I think you guys are needing Adobe RGB, so let's change it now. And it's quite a good idea to notice when you're making an image what actual file size you're creating, because if you go to export and you find, when you're making images, if you find that you've got a 10:8 which is sort of 200 megabytes, clearly that's different to what it should be. So you can get a rough idea of how big file sizes should be in this image size box. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK. And now all I need to do is basically find my image and drag it on there. So maybe I'll go to Bridge, and if it opens, you've got a big window here. I'm just going to pull it over and literally drag an image in. So because it's a RAW file, it's initially going to open into Adobe Camera Raw. So all I have to do is go bottom right of the screen and click OK. And now all I want to do is decide where I want it in terms of size. So you can see, using this method, I've got a layer above my background, and it's opened as a smart object. You can see this cross across it means it's a smart object. So this means it's still virtual. I could mess around with the size and not lose any quality. So I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and drag from a corner, and you'll see it will reduce in size centrally. And the beauty of this is, I could go this small and then make it bigger again, and it's not going to affect the pixels. Whereas if I save that when it's not a smart object and then decide to enlarge it, it's going to have to invent pixels. Okay, so it's quite good to do sizing as a smart object. So let's imagine we want it about here, and I could click OK. If you're not sure where you've got a series of images and you need them all to be placed exactly in the same place, so that when someone's viewing them, they're not sort of jumping all around in front of their eyes, it can be a good idea with this method to do one of two things. So one method is sort of freehand like this. If you bring up a grid, so you do that by going View and then Show and then Grid. Okay, or there's the shortcut there, which is much easier to use. So I just hit my punctuation key and Command and punctuation. Okay, and you'll get a grid up. So here I've got an image that's going to be in inches, and so my grid I've set it to inches with divisions of 4, and that's going to allow me to resize the image. If you need to change that, it's in Photoshop Preferences, and if you go to Guides, Grids and Slices, then, for example, say you're working with an A4 and you want to do this, just change this to be in, I don't know, in centimeters or millimeters perhaps. Okay, and there you've got your subdivisions. All right, and if you can't see, if you've got a very dark image or something, or a very light image and you can't see the lines, you can change the colors as well. So okay, so if I did want to sort of use this grid, all I have to do is, with my image selected here, I need to sort of make it active again so that I can adjust it. So the way to do that is, well, the shortcut is Command or Control T, or you can go up to Edit and Free Transform. You can also go into Transform and Scale, okay, and all other sort of weird and wonderful things here. So Command T is the shortcut, and again, holding down my Alt or Option key, I can sort of decide where I want it. So what I could do if I was using this method is perhaps just note where I am in relation to the grid lines, and then make sure that every other image I do the same thing. Okay, and then when I'm ready, I just say yes, and I can get rid of the grid with the shortcut Command punctuation, and away we go. So I would have to flatten this layer, and you can do that by being on the layer and right clicking and choosing flatten image. Or another way is you could go up to layer. So if you forget the shortcut, just think, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to flatten a layer. So look for layer and go all the way down to flatten image. Okay, and that makes your background base flattened, and now again you could export it or save it out or whatever. So that's that method. And something that can get rid of that whole having to work out where you want the image on the paper is you can just decide in advance how big you want that width to be, or if it's a portrait, you know, what do you want the height to be or whatever. So you just need to decide one edge really in combination with the background. So the way you can do that is in your raw software. So if I was in Bridge and I was going into Camera Raw, I could do this with, you know, obviously lots of images. I could prepare them all at once. Let's widen this out. So I could take a whole bunch. So I'm just shift clicking to get the whole bunch and get them into Camera Raw. They're raw files, so I can just double click on them, give them a moment to open. And then all I need to do is select them all, and the export button is up here, top right. Click on that and I get the dialog box. So we'd be choosing our destination, talking about file name and file type and color space, bit depth. And here where it says resize to fit, we'd be looking at choosing the long side or the short side. Long side's kind of easier because you know it's easier to think how it is in relation to the print. And if you punch in something that's slightly smaller than your longest edge of the canvas, that will be, you know, that will get you there. And then your resolution, 300 pixels per inch. And your sharpening, I'd probably try and just do it yourself rather than let the software do it for you. So I'm going to look at all of these in more detail in Lightroom, but this is where you'll find them in Bridge, okay? It's pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to cancel this. So in Lightroom, let's find our images. Okay, so let's imagine I've got this whole bunch of images and I want to make them 9.5 inches the longest edge. All I have to do is finish working with them, say, and all I do is go File, Export, and I've got all the same choices. It just looks slightly different to the Bridge, to the Adobe Camera Raw export dialog box, but it's all the same stuff. So let's take a look in a bit more detail. So we've got where to send the images. So make sure you know where you're sending these images. You know, you don't want to be hunting around for them. And your file naming is pretty crucial. So make sure you know what the brief is asking for. you can see how you're adjusting your image. It will show you as you write something, it's going to show you in the example what you're designing, as it were, in the name. So, if you're finding that you put a name in, say, and you're thinking, oh, that's a bit bunched up, need to add a hyphen or something like that to break it up. You can see everything happening down here. All right. So make sure you understand what the naming convention is that you're needing for your brief. And image format. There we go. We got JPEG. Color space, Adobe RGB. Generally, when you're sending to the web, it would be sRGB. This would normally be what you'd be looking for. This is the color space that, although smaller, most images will look correct or what you're expecting on most devices, and so that's why sRGB is generally chosen. But Adobe RGB is, I think, what you're needing for your brief. And that may be because that's what we would normally use for print. And so, the brief may be emulating a print submission. Okay, so make sure you know what you need. And then quality wise, if you can, I would give as much quality as you can. But if you do need to reduce it for any reason, this is where, and a common one is to sort of take it down to about 80%. Okay. So here we've got our resize to fit option, and you can just choose your, set your measurements, and this is where you would change it to 9.5 if that's what you're after. Okay, and then resolution 300 pixels per inch. So we're kind of getting there with what we need here. And sharpening, again, I would leave it if I were you. But saying that, it depends on the image. It may work. Test all these things. So yeah, just a point on that, I would just be careful if you've got an image with lots of sort of highlights that are a bit on the edge, or if you've got an image which has a lot of noise in the darks, then just be careful of what sharpening is going to do. It might accentuate anything that's not going to work well. So include all your metadata if that's what's required. So this is where you can make a choice on that, but I think you're needing all of your metadata. And post-processing, so if you're going to be adding borders, you can choose to open them in Adobe Photoshop afterwards, which could be handy. Okay, so maybe I'll do that now. Just whoops, I don't know what I did then. I think it might have slightly crashed, maybe not. So it's just showing up the top left what it's doing, giving it a little moment. Okay, so we've got these little pictures in here, and if you check the size of them, they will be 9.5 inches wide. So image size 9.5 inches. Okay, and then we just do what we did before. So for some of you, it might seem, oh my God, I've got 30 images to put borders on. You can, if they're all going to be the same, it's really worth learning how to make an action, because then you can just literally run that action as you export the images out. So perhaps I should show you that. I didn't do this in the session, but it might be worthwhile. So for example, I'm going to actually just duplicate one of these images. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go image, duplicate, and this has got copy in the title now. Okay, so I'm literally doing this just so I can create an action on a copy and then just delete the image and use the action on the rest of the open images. So all I need to do very simply is go to the actions option, and hopefully you've got that visible. If you haven't, just check that you are actually in the photography workspace, all right, which makes sense anyway because you've got everything you need for photography. So you would open this and there would be default actions in here with some sort of fairly questionable actions. You need to make your own set. So go to the folder, call it your name, and click OK. And bear in mind that on your own computer these will stay. On the IoP computers, I'm not sure what will happen there. They would be specific to just one computer so bear that in mind. I'm not sure how it works with those, but anyway, so you make your set and then you want to create an action. So we're just going to click the new action option and I'm going to call this border 10 by 8 or something. Okay, and make sure it definitely describes what you're doing. And then I'm just going to click record. And then I'm just going to go image, canvas size, do my thing. And click OK. All right. And then I'm going to stop recording with the little square button. So this has created this action. It's called border 10 by 8. So now all I need to do is, if I get rid of this one, now all I need to do is I could on a single image play that action. So I've got this image here ready, 9.5 inches wide. I can click action and play and it will just pop the border on. All right. Or if I undo that, I can also do it for the whole bunch of images that are in here. So let me just check what I've got in here. I think I want to get rid of that one. That was already done. And I want to get rid of, I don't want any of the ones that aren't 9.5. So your preparation is key. And by the way, you could also have an action for sizing them to 9.5 inches in Photoshop. So you could have that as part of your action could be sized to 9.5 inches wide and then add a border, so do as you need. So now I'm going to go File, Scripts, and Image Processor. So this is basically going to process the whole bunch of images and give me the opportunity to run that action on all of my images. So let's click that. So when you get this dialog box up, you want to decide where your images are going to go, and also it's asking you which images. So we want to use our open images. Selecting the location, it's quite a good idea to know exactly where they're going. So I'm going to just check where do I want them to go. I've got folder for you guys. Here we go. So I will pop them on here and I'm going to save them as a JPEG. Quality, the default is fine. I don't want to convert the profile to sRGB, so make sure you check that. Make sure you check that isn't checked. Oh God. Check that you are not making it sRGB for your brief because you need Adobe RGB. Okay. And then preferences, we're going to choose to run the action. So find your set and choose the title of the action that you want to run. And if you want your copyright in there, you can pop it on there as well. And make sure you include the ICC profile, which is basically, you guys are saving everything you can with your image so that your tutor can see what your file consists of. Okay. And then run. So, by the way, ICC, International Colour Consortium, is what that stands for. It's basically the International Colour Consortium were an organization, or they still are, that decided that they basically needed to come up with some kind of worldwide profile system. As digital work became more and more common, it was realized that things would be pretty random if no one was keeping to the same standards. So that's where your ICC profiles come from. Okay, and we click run. So this is always the stage where I forget where I'm sending the images. But if let's have a look. I'm going to look in Bridge and Desktop, and there we go. So it's created a little folder, nice and handy for you, and you could rename that folder. You could just right click on it and find rename if you wanted. But basically, when I click in there, there's all my images with the borders on. So that would be really handy if I had like 50 images that I needed to do that with, rather than having to do them one by one. By the way, if you want to check your metadata, just click on an image and you'll see all the metadata there. So that's what your tutor will see. And you can check you've got the right color profile and so on. And if you've set up your copyright beforehand, you'll have your copyright in there as well. Okay, so when you record an action, it just records the steps that you take that are successful to the end result. It doesn't record the time it takes you. The only thing I would say with actions is, if you do use them for anything other than this, I would take the time to really learn them properly, because they can mess you up a little bit if you get things wrong. Okay. So essentially, folks, we've looked at adding a border very simply in Photoshop, just by going image size, making our image what we want, smaller than the border itself, and then going image canvas size. So nothing wrong with doing it nice and slowly like that. Okay. We've looked at dragging images in as a, so let's undo this. I don't know why I undid that. So file new, let's just, we can make a 10 by 8. Make sure you get your color profile right. And then we could drag an image in. So I could do it from Lightroom this time. Whoops. Let's make Lightroom a bit smaller. So it's going to open it in Camera Raw first, as it makes a smart object. So just hold down your Alt key, put it where you want. We looked at making a grid over the top so we can find out where we need to be on the paper, as it were. And we looked at checking you flatten your image afterwards as well. So if we were to apply this and then get rid of the grid, command punctuation, flatten the image. Okay, so that's another way. And we've also looked at preparing the image beforehand as we export out of our raw software. So preparing it at a size that's just slightly smaller than the width of the end image. And then adding borders, and then we looked at making an action to do that a little bit faster. So hopefully that's useful. There are other ways to size images, so we could also be using crop tools in various ways and so on. But always remember that you're restricted a little bit by the aspect ratio of your image. So there is no way that I can keep my entire composition like this and have an equal border on a 10 by 8 image. It's just impossible. I'd have to stretch the image up, So just be aware of that. and get in touch if you need any help, folks. All right, and I'll see you next time.